WIFMs. WIFMs. So this is something that I wanted to share about. I'm Scotty, and this is the Cybersecurity Sensei Mentorship Program. We have our webinars every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Time on freeconferencecall.com. We have a very active Facebook group. We've got an email distro list. And I'm trying to put together a LinkedIn group. So we're just getting started with that as well. But we have an incident response team. We've got a speakers bureau. We've got a tech publishing team. Don't have any of them with me. But we do a lot of things to try and help our own people stay engaged in the cybersecurity realm, but also to get experience so that they can take that with them into the cybersecurity career fields that they go into. So always happy to have new mentees join us, and we will go from there. So let's talk WIFMs. You probably have heard this before, but when I say WIFM, what does that stand for? Anyone? Gary, Nicole?
No, I purposely didn't look it up because I wanted to be here and learn today.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. WIFM is a very old term, but it stands for what's in it for me. What's in it for me? It's either WIFM or WIIFM. I've seen it both ways. But it means what's in it for me. And like I got this from a writer online. It says, you know, it's not like everyone is thoroughly selfish. That's not what we're talking about. What they're mentioning is that people tend to make decisions and follow actions that are going to benefit them. If I have two choices, one, you get to work 8 hours and we're going to give you a paycheck. You get another one, we're going to work 8 hours and you get a bigger paycheck. Which am I going to choose? People tend to choose that which benefits them more. So there are lots of things that we consider when we talk about WIFMs, but it's that you lean toward that, or you tend to make decisions about that benefits you the most. And I've got some thoughts and ideas about this. We do and support what benefits us. In other words, somebody actually had did some studies on this, and one of the studies said that everything being equal, everything else being equal, if the situation was the exact same, either choice you had, if everybody benefited equally or everyone was penalized equally or whatever, and you had to make a decision, the studies showed that people would more often make a selection or a decision that had personal benefit. If everything else is the same, and I choose this and I get 5, and I choose this and I get 6, I'm going to choose the 6. And it's human nature to want what we want and more of what we like. Self-interests drive us all, and that's important for us. And I'll share this as we go further on. Self-interests are present everywhere. So that's the part that I'm trying to help people understand. We seek outcomes that benefit ourselves. We avoid situations or decisions that are detrimental. In other words, let's say I'm at a car dealership and I can afford a $300 car payment, but I can't afford a $600 car payment, but I really want this car, but I can't afford a $600 car payment. So usually we'll go for the $300 car payment, because the detrimental situation, if I make that decision for the $600 car payment, it's going to make me have to eat tuna fish on crackers for the next 3 years or something like that. We tend to move away from detrimental situations in our decision making. So we talk about ourselves being the final deciding point, and in some cases, it's the starting point for our own decision making. So why is that such a big deal? Well, when I'm talking about this from a professional standpoint, you have to realize that there are WIFMs throughout the process. It's not just you. I give the example here. I want to work where I'm valuable, where I feel valuable and valued. You guys may have heard this. For job satisfaction, there have been numerous surveys. And in most of the surveys that I've heard of, the number one job satisfaction was not a job that paid me a lot. The number one job satisfaction was I feel valuable. I feel like people value me being here. I feel valuable doing this. That's number one. Number two is pay. But so a place where I can provide for myself and my family, where I have good job satisfaction. However, your supervisor may be looking for not only their own personal WIFMs, but team WIFMs. And there are things like teammates who are good at what they do, who'll be cooperative and benefit the team. That's another thing I bring up when you're going into your initial job interview. You can have the greatest skill set in the world, but if you're a jerk, they may not hire you, regardless of your skills, because your attitude could pollute the rest of the team. And many supervisors, I've experienced it myself. Many, I've looked at people that had wonderful skill sets, but I wouldn't let them anywhere near my team. I'm like, no, I don't want to, bring you on and then have to replace the other two guys that left because you have such a toxic attitude. So the WIFMs from a manager standpoint are sort of team related. What's in it for the team? What benefits the team the most? And from a subordinate standpoint and a supervisor standpoint, a manager's looking for people that make his or her job easier, not more difficult. And then you look at your organization, your company, the entity that you're working for. They want good employees who are not an excessive drain on human resources. In other words, if you're in there every 2 weeks, asking for a raise or trying to get an advance on your pay or asking for, extra health insurance or counseling because you're not getting along with your coworkers or whatever, you become a drain on the HR system and you get sort of earmarked as being somebody that is doing that and consuming a lot of the corporate resources. And I said, good workers, happy workers, and good citizens. You always want people that make you look good at a company. You don't want people that you have to apologize for, or one of these days end up, doing things that make you on the front page of the New York Post or something like that. So the organization's WIFMs are organization-centric, but they involve you. The manager's WIFMs are team-centric, but they involve you. So when you go into a room and you are, let's say, doing an interview, you're asking for a raise, you're looking for increased responsibility or whatever, you have to realize that there are a bunch of WIFMs, for lack of a better term, there are a bunch of WIFMs at play in there. You're saying what's in it for me. Your boss is saying what's in it for me and the team. The company's saying what's in it for the organization. And of course, your family is saying, are we going to be able to buy shoes for the kids? Or, afford a nice home or something like that. Everyone is driven by their needs. And when you're in a particular situation, being aware of everyone's needs can help you. But I wanted also to point out, it's not black and white. It's not everybody has needs, etc. There are other things that drive people. I call them secondary or indirect WIFMs. One is investment. Delayed gratification is a biggie. You buckle down and do extra work so that you'll get a promotion. You go to night school so that you'll get a degree and end up being more highly qualified for what you're doing. You take the shot now, you drive your clunker for an additional 5 years so that you can get improved retirement or something like that. Delayed gratification. Another one is society. There could be family or generational needs. A lot of people have been, I've spoken to in interviews, they come in and some of their needs are not very noticeable. Somebody's like, is there a way for me to work night shift? And I'm like, why would you want to work night shift? Well, I'm a caretaker for my mother, and I can get somebody in the night, but I want to be there in the daytimes. Literally, they are trying to sacrifice on behalf of their family members. And that could be driving them as well. What's in it for my family? Military service. How many people are going to go off and fight and possibly, become disabled or worse on behalf of their country? That's patriotism. That's, military service. People aren't out there fighting because they're doing it for their own benefit. They're doing it for the greater good, the larger cause. Also philanthropic. People donate to charities. People donate their time. People volunteer to do things. A great example is all the people standing out there in the cold in front of the major stores holding those little bells with the red pot there. Why are they doing that? Because the Salvation Army is a good cause. They do things for society. They do things for the benefit of all. And so that's why people stand out there in the cold and ring those little bells. They're not doing it for themselves. They're doing it for the greater good of others. There are also ideological things. How many people put themselves in harm's way because they believe in something to the point where it becomes sacrificial, to where they're not doing it for their personal benefit. They're doing it because they believe in something so strongly, they are willing to put themselves second to whatever that belief is. So you have to think about that. And the challenge is frequently those are clashing. So be aware of that. It's not to benefit, it's to, it's against, when it's for one thing, it could be against another. So be aware of that. Not all WIFMs are 100% good. And the last one I put down, if you think about it, some people break into homes because of their drug habit. They've got to get money to the point where they can support their obsession or their addiction. And so they do things that aren't in their best interest. An addiction itself is detrimental. It will wear you down. It will draw the life out of you. But many people are stuck in that addictive or compulsive loop to the point where everything else centers around that compulsion. So that's not a good WIFM, but it's something that does drive people's actions. So people would be walking down the street and say, maybe I can steal that lady's purse. That drives people's activities as well. Not to say it's good or bad, but it could drive them to steal somebody's purse. So secondary WIFMs, something to think about. Not everybody's driven for their own personal good or the greater good of society. Some people are driven by needs instead. So just something to think about. So I'm going to kind of summarize and bring it all back in. Everybody has WIFMs, everybody. And some WIFMs are, like I said, they could be beneficial for me. They could be beneficial for my family. They could be beneficial for society. They could be beneficial for the cause I believe in, or whatever. And we act according to those WIFMs. We vote according to those WIFMs. If somebody stands up there and says, what was the old phrase back during the Depression? I promise a chicken in every pot. Somebody said, I want you to be fed. And some people, thought that that was a good thing. They were having difficulty feeding themselves and their families, and somebody promised them a chicken in every pot during the Great Depression, and they were elected, for example. And also, it's important for us to know that WIFMs can either be complementary, they could be working together in parallel or towards similar goals, or they could be conflicting where they come in friction with one another. So in a business sense, you always want to make sure that you are aware of all the WIFMs in your room, in your interview, in your work environment, in your corporate work, in your family dynamics. Susie has to get to her piano recital. That means that a parent has to take her. So that means that a parent, whatever you're doing, if you're watching the big game, tough. Get Susie in the car to her piano recital, etc. So everybody has WIFMs, and you have to try and make sure that whatever is going on, it works to your benefit. And by being aware of everyone else's WIFMs, you can actually monopolize on that. You can turn WIFMs into a win-win if you're sitting there at your job interview and you know what drives your supervisor or your potential new manager. What's driving him? And it's not just, I want somebody that's good at SQL, or I want somebody who's good at GRC for federal privacy laws or something like that. There's more to it than that. So if you study the organization and what the organization considers to be valuable, many companies will pick a particular cause. It could be Alzheimer's. Why? Because the CEO's mom died of Alzheimer's. All of a sudden, Alzheimer's becomes important to that company. It could be March of Dimes. It could be Special Olympics. It could be a charity that repurposes people's donated vehicles. It could be a lot of different things. If you tend to synchronize yourself with the corporate needs, and then you work to make sure that you are complementary to your supervisor's needs and your coworkers' needs, everybody wins, because you are an asset in whatever situation you find yourself. So that's why I wanted to sort of put it in this fashion. WIFMs aren't just what's in it for me, but be aware of other people asking what's in it for them. That's it. Any questions, comments? Something come to mind as a result of what I've shared? Thoughts?
We're going to be doing mock interviews in about a month, and so this will be great to bring up, because we do always say, make sure you research the company and make sure you're tying your different things on your resume to those companies' interests or what they're looking for. But this kind of brings it into a better context, I think. So thank you. That's awesome.
Thank you, Nicole. Yeah, I've been in a whole bunch of situations where if you know what the other person is thinking, or you tend to know what the other person is thinking, you can help make yourself look so much better. And that's why That's why I mentor. That's why I share. And I talked about that. I share it many times. An award-winning systems engineer that my vice president told me, you need to hire this guy onto your team. At that time, I was on the Secretary of Defense support team. My team was small, very focused, and very client-driven. Why? Because we kept running in and out of Donald Rumsfeld's office all day long to get stuff done. I brought this award-winning systems engineer, the top guy in our company, in for an interview because I needed a new systems engineer. And as I interviewed him, I said, we're a tight group. We are very client focused. And the challenge to that is we're in the middle of doing a whole lot of projects, and project completion is your absolute top priority. However, the phone rings and you could be running down the hall to help somebody with their mouse. And then you've got to get back to your project, and then the phone rings and you've got to run down the hall and help somebody with their email. And then you've got to get back to your project because your project is not going to get done, and it's not going to go any longer than what the government set as the requirement. So I said, you're going to have to go back and forth between project completion and customer satisfaction mode, sometimes several times throughout the day. What do you think about that? And this guy, being the techie that he was so focused on tech. He said, yeah, sometimes customers can be annoying. I didn't hear another word he said in that interview. I called up my vice president and I said, I'm not hiring him. He's like, what? He's the greatest. I said, no. He said the customers can be annoying. And my vice president, I still remember, his word was, oh. That was the conversation. I am not going to hire somebody that a situation could arise in which I have to go in afterwards and apologize for him. Not going to happen. You are going to be complementary to this team's mission and this team's activities, and the people that are already here that I hold in high esteem, you're going to complement this team or you're not going to belong to this team. So many people that I've spoken to, we've done like mock interviews, and I say, you get to that final last question during your interview where the supervisor says, do you have any questions for me? Or, is there anything else you want to tell me? And, the famous phrase is, why should we hire you? And we all know that that's the point where you have practiced your elevator pitch, your 30 seconds about me, and why it's such a good thing for me to be here talking to you, because you could hire me and I will benefit you. The elevator pitch. But when I have gotten some of my people here, some of my mentees, I've actually heard one say, well, I'm good with computers. Don't start there. Everybody's good with computers. You say, oh, I have good communication skills. Don't use that. Everybody says they have good communication skills. Just ask them. So find something that communicates your value to them. And sometimes it's not your technical skills. Sometimes it's your personal skills and how you can be an asset to them in areas they hadn't even thought of. So WIFMs, they make the world go around. You can't avoid them. And every situation you walk into, be aware that other people are driven by their WIFMs at the same time you're driven by yours, and you can make those work together.